Hey guys, I want to talk about how I came across the I word. Let's say inkwell, you know what I mean. My history before I started posting here, why I took on that label, that sort of thing. Kind of a decline origin story type of video. This one is a long one, probably a bit of a jumble, so get yourself a cup of tea. As I have mentioned in a previous video, I did have a girlfriend when I was 13, 14. Didn't go all the way with her, but I did get my first kiss and some other stuff. I don't want to get demonetized, so I won't go into detail. Didn't end well. She dumped me for my best friend. And after that, I never really tried. I didn't approach or anything. I didn't have many options around me, and I didn't try and find girls outside my social group, which was what I really needed to do. I was just too shy and reserved to do that. Or I didn't have the drive. I guess I was just waiting for things to happen. While other people, including some of my friends, moved on to more serious relationships where they went all the way, had the first time in their teens like normal. I was getting into gaming and weeb stuff, wasting my time online. I finally got my own computer with a Q6600 quad-core CPU, Radeon 3870X2 graphics card. It could play Crysis on medium. At that time, high-speed internet was pretty new to me as well. We hadn't had it for long because my family was poor. I watched anime, I bought a body pillow and a tanga, which is like a fleshlight if you don't know. I fell for that 2D women meme, and I just stopped thinking about real-world women. I was not happy. I couldn't handle school and studying. I was alone. I fell out with most of my friends who turned against me. I don't know why. They were just not good people. I only had one or two left by the end of school. Barely scraped through year 12, got a pretty low score. Went to uni for accounting, dropped out first semester, switched to IT, which I did graduate from. It must have been around the second year of uni when I realised it was over. Nothing had happened for me. Any new opportunities from starting uni had passed without me really trying or getting anything. The girls in Intro to Programming Japanese 1, the anime club, I didn't make a move. I didn't try. I let this happen. I think it was during my uni years, maybe my first year, 2012, that I first got into the manosphere. I think I tended towards MRA, or men's rights activism, as well as some general anti-feminist, anti-SJW stuff. And as a weeb and a little bit of an edgelord, a related field I was into was anti-censorship stuff, which does tend to lead to anti-SJW and anti-feminism. I did read some stuff from other parts of the manosphere, such as MGTOW or Men Going Their Own Way, and occasionally read at the Red Pill and PUAs like Rollo Tomasi, Rush V, Royce, although I didn't agree with a lot of their stuff. Some of it was interesting. How exactly I came across the manosphere, not too sure, but before you even think about inkwell, you realise at some point, or rather, it simply becomes more prominent that as a low-status, undesirable male, society is against you. You're at a disadvantage. You're going to be treated worse than other people and have fewer opportunities in life. A lot of people out there hate you and they want to step on you. A lot of women would prefer if you died or were locked up or never existed. I remember staying up all night reading some misinterest comment thread on a blog once, and it was the worst, most hateful stuff. I don't remember what it was about, but it was bad. These days, the vast majority of, if not all, people telling me to kill myself are men, black pill, inkwell types who are probably .co users, social Darwinists. But back in the day, you used to read about how much a lot of women hated undesirable men, how they wanted us genocided or something like that, and they used to try to get guys to kill themselves, with their male orbiters also helping. Back in the days of women drinking out of a male tears mug and hashtag kill all men. Obviously, these women still exist because they're women, so they're allowed to say what they want with few repercussions. But it's not something I think about much anymore. The game is rigged. Whether you're talking about dating or more broadly, The deck is stacked against you if you're a man at the bottom of society. MGTOW tells you it's not worth bothering with women, not worth the trouble, and I guess that cope worked for a while. I tried not to think about my loneliness. I had some issues with some of the manosphere content that leaned more towards the right wing, mainly in Red Pill and PUA, as well as the MGTOWs. The gender essentialism and evolutionary psychology, like men are this way and women are that way, and the idea that women are not morally culpable because they're just doing what their biology tells them. The right-wing economics and being against welfare, the white nationalists, traditional conservatives thinking that the old way is the solution to everything, etc. Obviously there were parts of the manosphere that I liked, but the tradcons and assorted right-wing friends were getting louder. Two blogs that I liked in particular were Pro-Male Anti-Feminist Tech and Omega Virgin Revolt, both MRA, MGTOW kind of blogs. I occasionally looked at CAAMIB, also known as That Inkwell blogger, although he was generally a bit extreme for me. Might have been the first time I noticed the I word. He had a more loose definition of inkwell than today's mainstream definitions. He had gotten laid before. His definition was something like 6 months of not getting laid, excluding paid encounters. I still have a loose definition myself, because I'm not pure enough for today's inkwells. In 2014, two things happened: Gamergate and Isla Vista. Firstly, Gamergate. I know some people dismiss it as meaningless internet drama, cringe, or something like that, but it is relevant. The main story was that some indie developer slept with several video game journalists and got positive coverage for her game, and she wasn't some innocent victim, she was someone with a history of trolling and doxing people, that sort of thing, abusing people. She falsely accused users of the image board WizChan of harassment, apparently faking it all herself. They said it was all from the same IP. The place back then was seen as an inkwell-friendly space, although they later became hostile towards inkwells. The drama surrounding this site was something that brought inkwell to my attention. And then there were these Gamers Are Dead articles across a large number of sites, probably working together, branding gamers as misogynist white males, claiming that the industry doesn't have to cater to so-called gamers anymore. There was a big campaign trying to get advertisers to pull ads from those sites that insulted gamers. Obviously, being a YouTuber now, I don't support any campaigns that try to get people's ad revenue pulled, because I have been on the receiving end of demonetization myself, with my most popular videos being demonetized and probably penalized in the algorithm because of that, and age-gated too, some of them. But my thinking was different back then. The impact to me, I guess, was Gamergate was possibly the peak of my pre-inkwell coping way of thinking. I just want to play my video games and watch anime without anybody trying to mess with it, censor it, change it. I don't have much to enjoy in life, just let me have these things without being constantly attacked every time I open my browser, every time I try to enjoy a piece of entertainment. Let me cope in peace. On the other hand, as I mentioned, it started to make me aware of inkwells because of that WizChan connection. Another impact was that I lost a lot of respect for the media with the extremely biased way they covered the topic and the way they really brutally attacked people. Let's talk about Isla Vista. Before I say anything, disclaimer, I don't endorse anything violent. You know the story of Isla Vista 2014, Google it. Some virgin shot a few people. I noticed that all the mainstream media articles were referring to this guy as white, even though everyone knew he was not white. He was mixed race, half Asian, and he identified as mixed, although he did value his white ancestry. The media deliberately erased and misrepresented his race because he had the wrong views, he did the wrong thing. and they didn't want to address the underlying problems, they just wanted to hide them. I myself identify as mixed race, not Indian or white, and like ER, I do prefer being mixed race to being fully non-white. Contrast to Reddit R Harpers, they are Asian supremacists who are mixed race but hate themselves and identify more strongly with their Asian side and wish they were full Asian. Personally, I think it's really toxic to be self-hating like that. In deliberately misrepresenting ER's race, the media dismissed and hid racial issues relating to Inkwell. The fact that girls discriminate so much against non-white guys in the dating market, like that's probably the main source of racial discrimination in the entire world, and how mixed race guys especially can have a lot of trouble finding a girl, especially being outsiders and not having any connections, being othered, not being part of anything. So I was like, there's obviously more to the story than what the media is saying. I looked into it. I did watch ER's videos and I read his book. I'm not 100% sure whether I read all of it, but I did at least read some of it. I don't endorse him, but I understood what he was talking about in his content about being alone. That was another entry point into this whole thing. He was probably one of the people who popularized the whole thing, even though I don't know if he ever actually identified with Inkwell. He did post on one of the PSL forums once, which was not an Inkwell forum. Maybe I should go into more detail on my thoughts about him in another video. During these later years of uni, I think as I started to wake up to the fact that it was over and I had wasted all my opportunities, my youth was fading, I wasn't seeing any new opportunities to meet women. Other things started to become less important and I shifted more towards Inkwell. Other manosphere topics, like those that MRAs talk about, were less relevant. These hobby politics, interests that were distant, talking about men being oppressed in various ways, and the latest controversy or drama, they were not priorities. The horror unfolding in front of my eyes in my own life was what I needed to address, what I needed to worry about, my own personal situation. Coping with anime and video games couldn't go on forever. This idea of just let me cope in peace, I could put that to rest. I could hardly enjoy a lot of that content anymore anyway. Coping with the MGTOW, I don't need women, don't worry about them, they're not worth it, was ridiculous. I had to be honest about myself, my desires, what I wanted in life. I couldn't get laid, but I wanted to. And that's something that should be okay to talk about. You can't ignore your natural desires. That's an important part of Inkwell, being honest about your desires. Unlike men shown their own way, who are honestly Inkwells in denial a lot of the time. I was worried about my life slipping away, and I realized that all that stuff about the robots and VR in the future, allowing us not to have to deal with women, was all just cope. All this talk of withdrawing from society, that's only a good option if you're rich, and you're only hurting yourself. Inkwell was the best fit in terms of manosphere identities. It was the most relevant topic to me and my situation. It was a non-ideological term that was about a condition or state, despite black pillars trying to claim it for themselves. And it didn't refer to a specific community, unlike terms such as love shy and true forced loneliness. Unfortunately, now people equate Inkwell with .co, which monopolized the term. People even write papers at universities about what do Inkwells think, and they just talk about .co and present that community and its identity as a whole Inkwell identity, which isn't the case. I didn't fit into any group. I never felt like any particular community was right for me. I was mainly a lurker. I didn't really get into WizChan. I only glanced at it once or twice. I lurked R9K sometimes and posted only a few times. That was somewhat a good fit for a while. The Inkwell subreddits like True Cells and Inkwells, I lurked occasionally, but I wouldn't have fit in there. And eventually the Reddits moved towards the .co, very specific type of Inkwell where I wouldn't be welcome, the extreme edgelord black pill type. Lookism was another place I lurked, although that was a bit later, and that was mostly a place for chads with BDD, but it still had some interesting information. Forever Alone didn't appeal to me much. I don't know if they were like feminist apologists or something like that, guys who were too much in the other direction. I did sign up to inkwells.co once. I had to try a few times before they would let me in, but nobody cared about my posts. I wasn't valued there, I was basically ignored. And I ended up getting banned because I wasn't the kind of person they wanted in there. They only want a specific type of extreme, edgy people who can provide fodder for the media to make outraged clickbait articles, as well as academia, and get on the radar of the law enforcement agencies. All these places were social clubs for people who had social skills, loud, abrasive people, especially in the case of .co, normies who could probably get laid if they wanted to. Some of them were getting laid, and they just took up hating women as a hobby that didn't have any real meaning or significance. They weren't for a shy and reserved person like me. I was always the outcast of the outcasts. I started a Twitter account around the time of Gamergate, mainly to tweet about that, but it became more of an Inkwell account, along with some other topics, screaming into the void, or rather, quietly sobbing into the void. I first used the Inkwell hashtag in 2015, but most of my tweets were in 2017 and 2018. Not a lot, just like my YouTube, I was only lightly active. It gave me a platform that was relatively unused at the time, especially in proportion to the attention the term was getting, where I could be seen by both normies and other Inkwell guys. And I could speak my mind. I was a lone operator, just doing my own thing, not part of any community. I got some interest, a few hundred followers. I had an interview with an Australian journalist once. It didn't get published though. I realised that I wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't going to be one of those big Twitter accounts. I didn't have it in me to be tweeting several times a day, and I couldn't print out those zingers that really rack up the likes. So I did think about getting on YouTube. One of my old tweets suggests I was inspired by ER and Kent, and I probably found out about hiding in my room around that time. He is not an Inkwell, but there is some crossover in my audience. Eventually the Inkwell hashtag and the usage of the term on Twitter more generally got flooded with normies using it as an insult. A lot of completely irrelevant content or just mindless hate against Inkwells. And then more popular accounts started posting in there. Posting in the hashtag became basically useless. You wouldn't be seen, just buried under the flood. Just like the Inkwell search term on YouTube became virtually useless for me earlier this year, and my search traffic dropped to almost nothing. My channel never recovered. I got a job in 2016, and for a while I was focused on that. The following year, I decided to finally spend some of that money on physical pleasures. Previously, being a virgin was part of my identity, I guess. And it was a way I could explain the situation I was in. I was Inkwell, but also a virgin. It was a term that people understood. Everyone was one once. But once I had had my first time, that more socially acceptable label of virgin was not available to me anymore. In Japanese, they have a term shiroto dote, in English, amateur virgin, meaning that you've never done it without paying for it. In other words, with an amateur. You've only had professional paid experiences. It was mentioned in the anime Bakemonogatari, episode 2, around the 6-minute mark. But I don't know of any similar term in English. The only term that fit was Inkwell. I was just a guy who couldn't get laid without paying for it. So in some way, I identified with the Inkwell term even more, and I was able to move forward in my thinking now that I had experienced something. I knew what I had been missing out on, especially when I started going raw in 2018. I made a video about my experiences with paid encounters, though hardly anyone watched it in the beginning. One girl from the UK said she might come to Australia to meet me, but she lost interest pretty quickly. From her, I heard about Just James, so even before I used the inkwell term in my videos, or Forever Alone or anything like that, viewers had made the connection, I guess. My second video was just a continuation in terms of talking about paid encounters. And yes, that group event was a paid encounter. And then in late 2019 I made my first inkwell video, and that was about some of the stuff I mentioned before in this video, how those guys in those communities seem pretty normal and I never fit in there. Strangely enough, only a short time later, I ended up getting laid with a couple, but I knew that I wasn't going to escape and be getting laid regularly like a normal person, so I kept the inkwell label, and not long after that, released a video that blew up. So you can call me incel or whatever. I've been basically in the same position since then. Today, nothing's really changed. I'm obviously not getting laid. I never did escape or ascend, and I knew that back then. The inkwell label isn't much use anymore due to not ranking in search and demonetization issues. And I guess it's not a trending topic anymore as well. You can see that MGTOW and stuff is growing more popular now, and Black Pill, other parts of the manosphere. I am somewhat growing more distant from the label due to that sort of stuff, and just being fed up with the toxicity. But really, not much has changed since late 2019. Still the same. So that brings us to the present day. And there is still obviously no girl in this room right now with me. And I'm still here, albeit with less views. And that's all for today. This video is long enough, sorry it's a mess. Hopefully that explains a bit about how I came across inkwell and chose to identify what led me here. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe. See you next time.